Lars Enarson here with an update from the war in Israel, day 662. It is July 29. We are right now in the middle of the final, third and crucial week during the time between dire straits, as it is called, the time period between the fasts of the fourth and the fifth month on the biblical calendar, which is characterized by an intensified spiritual warfare concerning Israel. And I want to begin by reading from 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8 and 9, where it says, "Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Resist him firm in your faith." This is what we must do as watchmen on the walls of Jerusalem during this very, very difficult but also important time period between the fast in the fourth and the fifth month, the time between dire straits. The first thing I need to say here is that there were no negotiations taking place, after all, on Sardinia between Israel, Qatar, and the United States. The reason is because of Hamas' outrageous demands, which were interpreted that they are actually not interested in any deal whatsoever. And part of the reason for that is because they are feeling such a strong support now from many of the Western nations. For instance, Great Britain, France, and other EU countries. So they feel that they have the right to demand certain things that are impossible for Israel to fulfill. So there is now no other option than that Israel has to go to war to the end against Hamas in Gaza. And the weapon that Israel has now to its disposal, most of all, is to threaten annexation of parts of Gaza. Israel will give Hamas a certain amount of days to decide if they're going to release hostages. Otherwise, Israel will continue the battle to defeat Hamas, but not only that, they will begin to annex areas in the Gaza Strip. And eventually, we believe that it's going to be necessary for a continued military rule over Gaza, just like it was before Hamas came to power in 2007 or 2005 actually, is when Israel withdrew from Gaza, and then 2 years later Hamas came to power, and that was the reason behind the atrocity on October 7. So Israel has learned a very difficult lesson, and now it's time to make the right decision in the midst of great opposition from the nations, because in the midst of all of this now there is a renewed effort to force Israel to accept the so-called two-state solution, and this is something that will be impossible for Israel to accept. And at this point we are very grateful to the United States that gives a firm support to Israel that the two-state solution is dead. But we really need to pray now that Israel will have the strength to do what is right in Gaza. And it's interesting that last week on Shabbat it was read in the synagogues all over the world from the Torah portion when Moses became very upset with the tribe leaders of Reuben and Gad, because Moses suspected that they were not going to take part in the conquest of the promised land. And I want to read from the book of Numbers, where we read in the Torah portion for the previous week, Numbers 32, and I want to begin in verse 7. This is Moses telling the leaders of Reuben and Gad, Why will you discourage the heart of the people of Israel from going over into the land that the Lord has given them? And Gaza is part of the promised land that God has given his people forever as an inheritance. And then he repeats what happened when the 10 spies gave an evil report about the promised land, saying that it is impossible for us to conquer the land because of the giants that are in the way. And Moses reminds the people of Reuben and Gad about this. He said to them, the Lord's anger was kindled against Israel, and he made them wander in the wilderness 40 years, until all the generation that had done evil in the sight of the Lord was gone. What evil had they done in the sight of the Lord? Refusing to go in and take possession of the land. So this is a lesson now that is being we are reminded of, I should say, during the final day of this time period between the time between dire straits. This coming Sunday is the concluding 21st day in memory of this failure of the people of Israel to take possession of the promised land. And may this become a reminder to the present generation of God's people to not repeat that mistake, but to be courageous and go in and take possession of the territory of Gaza, which belongs by an internal covenant and an oath forever to the people of Israel. So this is what we need to pray for, and this is what is at stake right now. There is such a battle now also against an intensified lies that Hamas is spreading, and that is gaining a foothold in the media and also among the politicians, especially in the West, that there is starvation in Gaza. This is a lie. It's an outrageous lie. More help and more humanitarian aid, more goods are coming into Gaza at this time than even before the war started. But the problem is that Hamas is taking control still over much of the aid, and then selling it to the people at enormous prices that are so high. And this, of course, is causing some of the people in Gaza to not afford the food that they need. But it's not the problem of Israel. It is Hamas that is taking control of the aid and then lying about starvation in Gaza in order for the nations to pressure Israel to stop the war, to conquer Gaza, and to remove Hamas from power. Remember, this is what we've been praying for from day one in this war, that what it says in Zechariah 9, that the king of Gaza will lose its power. The Hamas that has ruled Gaza over the past 18 years or so, that they will lose power over Gaza. It's interesting that Israel has now begun to cooperate with certain clans in Gaza, uniting with them in the war against Hamas. And maybe this is the beginning also of the answer to our prayer, that there will be a population eventually in Gaza among the Arabs that will be a remnant for God, that will serve God together with Israel. And this is what we must continue to pray for. And now so much is at stake right at this moment. So thank you for standing with us in prayer. Continue to cry out to God for His will to be done in Gaza. Just like I said in the previous update last week, when the borders of the land are extended, God is glorified in the nations. When the population increases through Aliyah, and when the borders are enlarged, that's when God is being glorified among the nations. That is the way it has happened over the past 120 years, at least, since the Jewish people have begun to make Aliyah, and they have enlarged the border of their territory. So we need to pray for that, because it will lead to the outpouring of the Holy Spirit on the nations to reap the final harvest. Thank you for being part of this intensified spiritual battle in your intercession. And may God richly bless you and anoint you. Of course, the other lie that we also need to battle in spiritual warfare, not just the lie about the starvation in Gaza, but also the lie that there is a genocide taking place. It's interesting that over 50 leading experts on international law, genocide, and the military have now reached a consensus that there is no genocide taking place in Gaza. They reject completely that claim, and they say this is a false narrative pushed by a minority of loud voices which falls apart under factual and legal scrutiny. It does not hold against facts of what is taking place in Gaza. Nevertheless, we are in a battle against the father of lies, and we need to fight with the weapons of warfare that we have been given, that are mighty through God to pull down these mindsets, these strongholds. So may God richly bless you as you pray for Israel at this critical time. Shalom.